Hello again, it's Franklin Jones. I've been getting lots of requests to discuss the response to the Jill Scott singing of the national anthem. I personally think it was heroic. I think it was moving. I think she reminded me of Billie Holiday and Anita Simone. She really did a thing. But however, you also notice on social media, there are lots of black people attacking her. A lot of black people saying it's a disgrace, it's an embarrassment. Many black people are they're echoing the same exact sentiments as many of the whites who are against her. I'd like to talk briefly about that state. So often when we see the state among our people, we dismiss it as being called coons and sellouts, or we say those crazy black Republicans. But the reality is that's not a coincidence what we're seeing. Black people have been socialized by the white society. Socialized is when the dominant culture exploits its monopoly over information that is repetitively and systematically fed into the mind of the subordinate population to make the subordinate population think in ways that are against their own interests and in ways that serves the dominant society. White social scientists calls it instilling a value system into the collective mind of the subordinate population that makes them adhere to the authority and existing infrastructure of the dominant society. They say it's the duty of the government to prevent dissent from rising from the oppressed against the status quo. It's a part of the social science of building society. People that have been socialized rarely ever learn of this fact. They instead normalize their mindset and they will fight against anyone who tries to free their minds. What we call mental slavery is actually socialized. And that's what's been done to our people. Now, when you say, why is all of us aren't that way? All of us have been socialized with some to greater and lesser degrees. The weaker a person's mental fortitude is, the stronger their brainwashing is. The weaker their mental fortitude is, the stronger their mind is, the weaker the brainwashing. There are 4 ways to brainwash the people, to socialize the people: by what they're taught, by what they see, by what they hear, and through repetition. Because the white society controls the education we're taught, the media images we see, the silent narratives we hear, and repeatedly hear. This allows them to program our minds without us even realizing it. They first start programming our minds when our minds are young, during our early education development, through an education that denies us of racially affirming facts, while constantly giving us information about the Caucasians, favoring Caucasians. This instills into our minds a value system that makes us more compliant with white dominance over our lives. It literally conditions us to accept white dominance over our lives. And that happens from kindergarten to 12th grade. Then, after we finish school, we're bombarded with propaganda that constantly subliminally tells us that we are our own worst enemy. We are the worst enemies. We are being conditioned to revere whites and to hate ourselves. And it's called socialized. So when we see these behavior among black people, well, they have been conditioned to think and behave in ways that serves and protects the interests of the white society and are against our own interests. You know, it's time for us to start learning that there are social sciences that are being used to maintaining white dominance. They use these social sciences to maintain their dominance and to facilitate their long-term oppression of black people. Please, it's time for us to learn how this whole thing works and stop assigning our plight to a biblical fairy tale and our condition to a silly slave syndrome myth. We are being socialized, and the socializing is continued unrelentingly through the white society's monopoly over information. The only way we will free our minds is to recognize what's being done to us. The more we recognize it, the less its power over our minds become. It depends upon us being ignorant of the socializing. Dominant cultures socialize their subordinate population to think and behave in ways that supports the existing infrastructure of the dominant society. So when you see these black people on YouTube talking bad about Jill Scott, putting her down, saying all these terrible things to her, their minds have been conditioned to do so. They've been socialized, and they have weaker minds. Their minds collapse under all the programming. We have to understand that there are social sciences that are being used to maintain white dominance, and our people's minds have been socialized. People that have been socialized rarely ever learn of this fact. One love and peace.